could have brought you coffee.
I know, but it's okay.
It helps. It helps. You just hold
It's
something.
We're good.
Yeah. All right. So we're live. So we are joined today by Michelle Castillo, who is a teacher at what grade?
First grade.
First grade. She has been an educator for over 17 years. And this is a very important topic that we're encountering today with the giant movement as far as teachers' pay and education, supporting our teachers, and also the giant walkout that's supposed to happen Thursday and Friday. So much like myself, this conversation about support the red has come up a lot, and I feel like we don't know enough about the structure of pay, the structure of how a career grows inside the education system. So thank you for agreeing to doing this with us.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
No,
This is
it's
exciting.
amazing. It's amazing. So let's talk about a little bit about your career. So you've been an educator for 17 years. Where did you start?
So I've been teaching for 17 years, and I've taught for the same district and at the same school.
At the same school
Same
for
school.
over 17
17
years.
years, yes.
Wow.
And I love my community, and I watched it change and get a lot of different people. I've met a lot of cool, interesting people.
And
where I
challenging
teach.
people, especially in
Challenging.
education, right? Yeah.
Yes, but they've all taught me something.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's kind of like your goal when you are around people is what do you have to give me? What are you going to teach me today? How are you going to make me a better person today?
Right, exactly.
So I love it.
So what in your personal life, you could take us a little bit back to your upbringing or your teens or whatever it was. At what moment did you decide that education was your career path, your calling?
Okay.
Because so much like law enforcement or martial arts, these are not careers, these are callings. Because, and this is something that we'll later on touch upon, is that it's, and this is something that gets brought up a lot with law enforcement whenever law enforcement is facing a challenge, is you knew what you were signing up for. And that's one thing that we're talking about before we went live, which is something that gets brought up when it comes up to teacher pay, which is you knew what you were signing up for, so quit asking for more money. So what was it about your upbringing that brought you to education?
Well, in my house, school was it. School was going to save you. School was going to make you who you were. I never didn't think that I wouldn't go to college. I never didn't think that I could skip school or that I didn't put my best out every day. That was never an option at my house.
Wow.
My parents were young parents, and they lived the American dream. They made it in America.
Mm-hmm.
And they really pounded into our brains that school was what was going to help you. And it did. That's what made me the person that I am. I believe in education. I believe in going to school. I believe in learning. And I don't even believe in like just traditional school. I think that if you're going to put something in, you got to study it. You got to learn it, and you have to have passion for it so you can educate yourself. So for me, when I decided to teach, it was just kind of in me. That's what I wanted to do. But really, I would much rather work with kids than adults.
Right, and that's one thing that
Yes.
kept you like towards the lower grades, right? When
Absolutely.
kids are far more moldable, but they're also
Yes.
like a sponge at that time.
They want to know
Yeah.
everything. They want to know why people and animals have different noses. They want to know why our feet are different. They want to know. We went on a field trip today, and they were asking about the cockroaches in the case, like, why do they have holes on the side of their body? And it's just everything is so interesting to them. Even math problems, simple math problems, like, are you sure that 2 and 2 is always 4?
Yeah.
Can we change it ever? Like, will it ever change? Give that to me. Tell me that information.
Yeah.
Adults, they don't care anymore. But kids, man.
But for
totally
adults, it's something
interested.
that kills them because I'm a big, because we were talking, we just recently joined social media, so I'm going to give you a bunch of pages that you should follow.
Oh
One
my
of them
goodness,
is
okay.
like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, and one of the things
Yes.
that talk about like the responsibility of educators and parents is to not kill but harness and nurture the curiosity
Absolutely.
of their kids, which a lot of times with parents getting caught up in work, parents getting caught up in their own marital problems, whatever it is, when the kid comes up to them with a question, with curiosity, a lot of times it gets shut down because they are dealing with so much in their own
much other
personal
stuff.
life, which again, it comes back to who is, besides the parents, who is the person that the kid has the most contact with throughout the day. I would say probably over 40 to 50% of the day. And that's the teacher.
And
Man.
that's the teacher.
That's a teacher.
Absolutely.
And me growing up, I went to a Catholic elementary, so I can tell you good teachers. I can tell you bad teachers. I can tell you teachers that were passionate about education and teachers that were annoyed with my questions because I was a very curious kid. But there's teachers that don't have the passion that you have in teaching, the passion that I think needs to be in teaching. They just want the kids to repeat information. Here's a page, learn every word, and just don't worry about understanding it. You have a test and you need to memorize every word that's in this. And I think that's something that's come back to later on hurt the teacher vocation.
One of the things that I really try to do with my kids is instill their passion of learning. So, like, I have lots of curious kids, like you probably were, and I'm not able to answer every question every time, all the time. But if I instill a, hey, can we talk about that later? Or let me show you where you can find that.
Google it.
Or Google
You're
it.
right. That's my best.
Google it.
Yeah, Google it. Man. I don't know.
Google it, man.
Google it.
Find it.
Yeah.
That I think is a super good idea because now you're making the kid responsible for their learning. So yeah, your parents are busy. Yeah, life is happening around you. But when you want to learn and it's inside of you and you feel it, you go for it. You
Right.
find how to do it. You find all the other ways so that nothing stops you.
That's beautiful.
So you have to remember that, and kids are kids, and they will do that, but they have to be taught how to have that passion. They have to be taught
How to maintain that
how to
passion.
maintain it, and
Right.
that it's not always going to be beautiful, but you have to find it inside of you.
Right. And that's 100%. So myself, like I went through like a little wave of, like I said, like just being very curious about life, and then life happens. But I think I've always been curious about life, and again, this is where the birth of social media and the birth of cell phones, where I think at the beginning we didn't know how to use technology, so a lot of times we looked at the phone like something that is distracting our kids. But the way I look at the phone, and the way I think that people need to look at phones, is if you know how to use your phone, it's a well of information in there.
Yeah.
You have even Facebook. You can train Facebook. You can train Instagram to only show you what you're interested about. You know, if you like drama, it'll bring you drama. But if you like science, if you like things that are passionate, like if you can follow phenomenal guys like Gary Vee. Like that guy wakes up every morning and makes you feel you could be going 100 miles per hour, and Gary Vee feels you like you're not even trying. You know, so I think those are important people. Like you used to have to find a book that
Oh yeah, no.
that would bring that to your life, or you used to have to be able to physically touch that person that could influence you to that degree, you know, those teachers, those educators. But social media puts them at the grasp of your hands, where now you truly have no excuse. And I think that that's something that lacks in today's society. Is it's not your fault that you had a bad upbringing, but it's your responsibility to make sure that you change that. And you have that in your teachers, you have that in social media, you have it in your phone. Go find it. Go find those things, man.
Go find all those things that you love and that make you excited about life. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So
Yes, there.
so 17 years in education.
17 years.
We are finding we're finding that teachers have a lot of problems with their pay. So that's a huge challenge, and we're here to discuss that. So we wanted to talk about the growth of pay. So an average teacher 17 years ago, what would that pay look like?
Around 30,000 is where you start.
About 30,000. That's 17 years ago. So for a
17
teacher,
years ago. Probably today, maybe a little bit more. 32.
32. So after 17 years of constant dedication to the job, what would the average teacher make? So it's starting at $31,000. That person now makes in 2018
Less than 40.
less than 40. So you're talking
And that's
about
average, right?
right.
So, and it varies also from district to district.
Right, and
Which is
we
important to
wanted
know.
to yeah, it's very important that we wanted to break down how the teacher pay goes, but we're just talking an average. You're talking about less than $6,000 to $7,000 raise in the
Yes.
pays of 17 years of service,
Yes.
which is crazy for what teachers
Do.
what their role is again, you're talking to me, the profession of a teacher it's one that you have the most contact with my children more than I do. A lot of times when my kids were growing up, they would come and say, my teacher said this, and it was rarely controversial, or it was rarely, it was never negative, but it was an idea that was implanted in my kid's head, and he was like, okay, your teacher said this, let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
So that's the responsibility of the teacher. You have more contact with the kids than the parents themselves sometimes, and a lot of times these kids come from broken homes. So the only time that they're safe is at school, and this is the only time they can bring the guard down and express curiosity, which is something that they might not be able to express at home. Now let's go and talk about the teacher pay. This is something that a lot of people don't know, but the average teacher only gets paid during the school year,
Yes.
and they do not get paid during the summer. So for people that are doing the math at home, let's take a teacher that's getting paid $32,000 a year. If you want to get paid only during the school year, that's $32,000 per school year, not getting paid during the summer. So a lot of teachers have to go out and get
Another job.
a second or a third
Yes,
job sometimes.
Absolutely. So at our school, we have teachers who do after school activities, and that's not very much.
Right.
They probably get paid about $20, $25 an hour for whatever activity that they're doing. So you're looking at, I don't know, $50 a week extra. We have teachers who are real estate agents. We have teachers who take care of family members. And they have another job. They go out and they do something. When my father-in-law was a teacher, every summer he'd get another job. He worked for Coca-Cola, delivery. He worked in the lumber shop. He did other things to support a family.
That is crazy. So now the only thing.
Let me
sorry,
tell you something. So the teacher pay, when you said we only get paid in the school year, so you can choose how to get paid.
Right, and that was
So-
my next. Yeah, that was my next question. So now one thing that you brought up is you can choose how to get paid,
Right.
but you're still dealing with $32,000
You're still,
a
it's
year.
the same amount. It
Same
doesn't
amount.
change.
It doesn't change.
You just decide how you want it.
So go ahead
Yes.
and break that down for
So
us.
you could decide to get paid, take your salary and have it distributed over your 52 weeks a year, right? So all year long you get a paycheck. But you can budget easier that way. So some families choose to do that. Other families say, no, I just want it spread over 9 months. So your paychecks are larger, but you only get paid those 9 months. Or a teacher can say, give me 9 months, but I would like what is left over not a big check, that would be the wrong thing, in a check
In lump sum,
before
right,
I
yeah.
leave for the summer. So you're still getting your salary worth, but it's all the same amount.
Yeah,
You
it's
just
all the
choose
same
how to
amount.
give it, how to be given out. Yes.
Right, that is crazy. So what are we dealing with this teacher walkout? So one of the things that most people have in mind is that this walkout of this movement, it's about teacher pay, but one of the things it's not. It's far more than that.
It's far more than
So
that.
educate us.
Okay, I'll educate you. So the Red for Ed movement, one, the most important thing is that if you are involved in education, you can be a part of this movement. So if you are a school secretary, if you're a custodian, if you're a bus driver, if you're an aide, a half-time teacher, a full-time teacher, a music teacher, if you are involved in education, you can be a part of Red for Ed. It's not a union-based movement, it's an education-based movement. So that's really cool because everybody can be a part of this, because your janitor or your custodian or your school secretary, they play a huge role in your workday. Not only do they keep your school clean and organized, they help you with your children. They educate them. They teach them things. They watch you be a role model.
I don't remember
So they're
the
part
name.
of everybody.
I don't remember the name of the janitors for my school.
Absolutely.
And it was because they hung out in the hallway, and they, number one, they were always positive, or we had the grumpy one, but even the grumpy one showed you, hey, Mr. Steve, how you doing?
Yeah.
Nah, I'm here. Why are you here? Because you work every day.
That's right.
Because you work every day. Doesn't matter if you're tired. Doesn't matter if you're angry. You have to show up to work, do your job as a man. Oh,
Every day.
I got to go back to class. But that stays with you.
Yeah, it does.
You know,
It's
that stays
important.
with you. Absolutely.
All these people that your kids, you're saying, come in contact with, they all play some part of your child's life.
Right.
So the Red for Ed movement is for everybody. We're asking money, or not even asking for money. We want our money that was taken away from us in 2005
And this had to do with the
recession.
With the recession,
Yes.
right? So what? Okay, explain to us what were you talking about as far as the money that got taken away?
So in order to pay for everything, which is state taxes, which is how you pay for teachers, They had to remove from school budget billions of dollars so that we could pay for everything else, the housing bust and all of that. That money has still not been refunded or given back to the teachers.
Okay.
So we're behind. We're not even making, so we're teachers and students aren't even getting the money that we made back in 2008, 2005 that they used to give to education.
So with the pay cut, did that take you guys further back from your starting pay at one point?
So I wouldn't call it a pay cut. They just stopped giving us raises.
Okay.
So they weren't giving us anything anymore.
Wow.
It just kind of went stagnant.
Right.
For a good 10 years now. We've just been stagnant. And we've been trying to function with less money, less funds.
Do more
since
with
then.
less, just like
yes,
with
do
everybody
more
else.
with less. And continue to function and produce and have results with less.
With when you guys went into this deal, or pretty much when he was told that you guys were going into this, was there a contract? Were there what do they call it? They
They asked us if we wanted to take money away.
yeah,
No.
but was there ever a clause for saying, okay, we're going to do this for this number of years until the economy comes back, or no? This just said if everything goes well in the future, you will see your money back.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in writing where you guys can take this
No.
in a formal lawsuit, and say we want to.
There are some lawsuits that are happening, but I'm not really well versed in it, so I would rather not speak to that. But no, it was just taken. And that was the whole deal, is that when the governor offered us that 20% raise, not only was it not for every single teacher, I could come back to that in a little bit. He offered this money, and there's nowhere that it's coming from. It's not a sustainable revenue. So it's really just words. It's just him saying, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do it in increments, and by 2020, you'll have a 20% raise. But there is no constant funding to this raise. So, and our legislature changes. The
Right. So it's not attached to to a tax that is
No.
passing, like a half-cent sales tax or anything like that. It's
There
just,
is a half-cent sales tax that we passed a few years ago, but no, it's totally different.
right, but that went towards law enforcement and public parks and stuff like that,
Yes.
which was greatly needed, because we can talk about the conditions of the vehicles and equipment that law enforcement was having to deal with.
Absolutely.
Which was embarrassing. You, as you were responding to a high priority call where being quiet was of the essence, you could be heard just from the sound of your car before you could be seen. So it was ridiculous, the conditions that we were working under. But the going back to the teacher paid, so this supposed 20% raise is not attached to anything that's sustainable. It's
Nothing
just
sustainable.
nothing
No.
sustainable. That's
And
crazy.
once we
Okay.
vote in new legislative people into our branch, that could all change. They could say, no, we're not going to do that.
Okay.
So no, it's not coming from anything.
Right.
So in addition to saying no to that because it wasn't sustainable, the raise wasn't for every teacher. So for example, if you take attendance, that was you got a raise. But our music teacher, our PE teacher, our counselors, librarians, anybody extra, there was no money for them.
So the people that were just in the classrooms
That's it. That's what it was
teaching grade style
Exactly.
classes.
So
Okay.
even like
Is there a reason why other people, such as PE, were removed from this? Was it just not perceived as a valuable contribution to the education of kids?
it's
or?
possible. It's definitely possible that is the perception. But why wouldn't you? They educated and have contact and work with your kids just as much. And I love PE. And honestly, when you ask kids, what do you remember most about school? They don't usually say their classroom teacher. They usually say, oh, my PE teacher did this, or my music teacher showed me how to do this, or the counselor was there when my parents were getting a divorce, or
Right.
it's not always the classroom teacher. That's what I'm saying, is that education is about everybody that your kid comes in contact with.
But that's phenomenal to that the classroom teachers that were promised this 20% raise are turning it down for the sake that it's also leaving behind very important
People.
role players, very important
Absolutely.
people that are involved in having contact with our kids.
Yeah.
In my upbringing, it was funny, man. I kind of went through my wild years where, like I said, I was a young immigrant kid, came to America, got a job, still continue to go to school, struggling with ESL and stuff. But I got a job, and my family as a nucleus was falling apart, which disconnected me from my parents. And then it dawned on me that I was contributing more to the family financially than my own father, which made me, I'm telling you, I was a very clever kid. It made me come up with this formula where I was like, I don't think they can tell me anything. So I tested it. Didn't come home for a weekend, showed up on Sunday. And of course, as parents, I wanted to be like, rah, rah, rah. And I was like, no, here's how much I contribute financially. See you when I see you. But it wasn't until I wanted to ditch from school, because I already had a car, that my monitor, Gwen, from high school, saw me, and the disappointment in her eyes changed the way I looked at high school again. It wasn't, I didn't have a super meaning relationship with her, but it was like you were talking about. It was somebody that showed up for work, positive attitude, would sit down and talk to the kids about life or what's happening with you, and whatever it was, she was always there making herself available for kids that needed that positive, strong female role model, or just a role model at all. And that look that she gave me, it made me not want to ever ditch again. So it's crazy how you mentioned, like, it's not just the teachers in the classroom, it's everybody that's attached to
Education.
the education.
Even a bus driver.
Right.
Even our bus drivers, they're the first educator that kids come in contact with every day. Good morning. I'm so glad you're here today.
Right.
How many kids don't get that every day?
That's
Tons.
Okay. Yeah. Because we're talking about, like, a lot of these kids don't come from a stable home.
No.
And the first polite interaction is that of the bus
Absolutely.
driver.
Or even kids who come from stable homes. They're getting onto something where they feel safe, where it's friendly, where you're starting your school day off in a great way.
Right.
So it gives to everybody. Everybody involved in your school day is important.
So 20% not sustainable.
Not sustainable.
Removing a lot of the important role players in school education. What else? What are we going to do? What are the plans from the teachers?
So the plans to get there first, we're on Thursday. There is a walkout at the state capitol. We're going to be out there wearing red and asking the governor to make a real deal, asking our lawmakers to make a real deal. If you can't go, vote. When it's your turn to vote, pick people who believe in education. Pick people who believe that education is every day and it involves everybody, not just some people.
Right.
And that's who you should vote for. Make education your number one priority, because that's what changes things, is educated people who are in the know, who know stuff. It's the reality. You can't change that. And register to vote. If you're not registered to vote, register to vote. That's important. You can also go on the AEU website and you can sign a petition, send it to the governor, send an email, and
what is that?
talk about us. AEU, Arizona Educators United.
Okay, perfect. So we go there, and what do we do?
So it's a whole website, and if you scroll down a little bit, there'll be information with a link that asks you to email your governor. Click on it, send a quick email that says, I support the Red for Ed movement. I want teachers funded. I want schools funded. I want my kids to be educated. And it's important. It's not just your kids. It's everybody's kids, because we're going to get old and we're going to need kids to take care of us.
Right. It's the future of our nation.
Yes.
It's truly the future of our nation.
It really is.
What do you have to? So for the people that are not able, or that can attend, where do you want them to go? Wear red T-shirts and show up where?
I want you to wear red T-shirts. Wear red. Wear
Okay.
red until we get something.
Okay.
The educators have worn red all week this week.
Right.
And
where
where
are they meeting?
So we're meeting at the Capitol on Thursday, but there's also downtown. I don't know the address downtown, but it's in front of the education building downtown. People are meeting there. Color your windows, car windows, put up posters. Ask people to ask you about education. Mm-hmm. Why are you supporting Red for Ed? Ask them to ask you.
Right.
Give them, because your response is going to be different than mine, because we come from different places.
Right.
But everybody's is important. Everybody in education is important. We all matter. And the truth is, it's for the kids. You
Right.
got to do it for the kids. They shouldn't be in classrooms that don't have supplies. They shouldn't be in classrooms that don't have books, or that, the teacher has to go out and buy everything. That's not
So that's another
acceptable.
thing. So we have done school supply runs here at the academy, but I was alarmed at the number of schools that don't receive the supplies that they need. And I'm not talking about like schools like in the South Side or anything like that. This is entirely citywide.
Yes,
As
it's
far as
everywhere.
shortage of supply. But I think that also that's something that's very important that people can look up at their own is the alarming numbers of schools that have closed in Tucson.
Yes.
And I don't have the numbers, but being involved in law enforcement, one of the things that it was crazy for me. It was like all of a sudden, certain we had to go check on a abandoned or closed down school that has been now vandalized, and it almost seemed like every 6 months a new school was popping up where this school's shut down now. The kids are having to go to another school,
Absolutely.
which involves an increased number of students per classroom,
Yes.
and that affects your ability to supervise them, the ability to teach them, the ability to connect with them. There is a big difference between educating and teaching,
Yes.
and it changes with the number of kids that you have in the classroom. So how many kids do you have right now?
So I'm very lucky. I only have 22 kids. But I know of teachers who have way more than that.
Tell us some of the horror
So
stories.
there are, right now, Arizona has almost a 2,000 teacher deficit. So especially in the upper grades and junior highs and high schools, they're filling rooms with kids that have 30, 40 kids because there's not enough teachers to teach them. Because
40 kids per classroom.
people are leaving because they don't get paid.
Right.
So why are you going to deal with the stress and the workload when you're not? It doesn't feel like you're being respected, and it's better just to go across the state and make $10,000 more. So why would we do that?
Right.
You've got people whose teachers are. We don't have enough substitutes. So you have classes where your teacher calls in, and because we have days, sick days, personal days, we've called in, we've done it in the right amount of time, there's not enough substitutes to go around. So what happens to those kids? Well, they get split up for the day. Now a teacher who has 24 kids now has 35 kids. And it's just a day, but do you know how much kids learn in a day?
Right.
Tons.
Yeah.
And it's not one classroom affected, now it's 3 classrooms affected. Or they have to pull in special teachers like the remedial reading teacher or the gifted teacher, and they have to teach your class now. So what about all those kids that they're responsible for, that they have to educate? It affects everybody. It's like it's just never-ending cycle of what's next, and how do we deal,
Challenges, right?
Constant. And it's funny that you brought up law enforcement because I think that law enforcement is very much just like teaching, a very disrespected profession. And you give almost everything for the job. And
Right. But it's a calling.
And
It is
it's
a
a
calling, and
yes.
you join it because I joined law enforcement because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a difference. You signed up as a teacher because you wanted to make a difference. But we also joined not 100% agreeing with the terms of the contract, right? Like, you know what? I feel like I should be making a lot more for what I do,
Absolutely.
or for what this job might call that I do. I want to make sure that my family is protected and set up should something happen to me. But it's still the calling, and it's still the calling, and it's and you answer the call. But I think as you start getting older, when you start having other options, like going across the state, going to a different agency that is showing appreciation, that's showing respect, when it comes down to a city council that doesn't have a clear agenda against you, against education, against law enforcement, that has a different agenda, you go to another place and it's almost like a breath of fresh air where you, number one, you feel appreciated. That fire within you to engage the community with the challenges, it comes back. It comes back and it's huge. But shows like law enforcement, whenever they talk about a paid raise, there's always they say, well, not everybody, just the good ones, right? So that's one of the big arguments that comes up when they say, I believe that teachers should get paid more, but there's some bad teachers out there.
Okay.
Just the good ones.
Okay, so
How do we
here's
break
my
that down?
response to you. I, believe it or not, am not loved by every kid who's walked through my door. I have people who didn't like me, who never responded to me, who I didn't motivate. I didn't put a fire in them. They didn't like me. It happens. I'm a human being. I've learned that that's okay because it's what it is.
Right.
So it's really hard when you say, what about the good teachers? What about the bad teachers? We all are different. So
Right.
what I might classify as a bad teacher, somebody else might say, man, they were amazing. My kid was able to do this. They wanted to go to school every day. You should have seen how they were motivated to work. And I'm sitting there like, really?
Right.
So it's really hard to decide, is there good teachers, are there bad
Well,
teachers,
because
or are we all motivated by
it's
different
based
things?
it's based on the parent saying, well, that teacher clearly it's not good because my little Timmy failed their class, and his little Timmy that either didn't put the work or didn't connect with the teacher.
It's very possible,
it's
but
yeah.
there is an evaluation system
And
that
I was
the
going
teachers
that
go
so
through.
that's
Yes.
next. So what? So based on if I go in there and I say, I believe that Miss Castillo is a bad teacher.
Right.
Right. Didn't connect with my little Timmy, and my
Right.
Timmy is an angel.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Lots of little Timmys out there.
There's lots of little Timmys.
Yes.
So the only difference is I knew my Timmys, and when my Timmys did something wrong, I was like, yeah, you fucking did it. I know it. So,
Yeah.
but what does that process go when? How does the grading of the teacher to make sure that the teacher number one is setting up? Because you were talking about how going back to the pay, there is a way for the teachers to increase the pay when they set up goals
Yes,
and
we
then
have
meet
goals.
them.
Absolutely.
So, talk about the evaluation system of a
Okay,
teacher.
so an evaluation system is based on a rubric, and there are different parts to the rubric, like what does your classroom management look like? What does your professional growth look like? What are your contributions to our school? What do you how do you teach a lesson? Because there's also a style that districts want their teachers to teach in, and there's all these lessons and strategies and models that we're supposed to use when we teach. So administrators are trained and taught to go in and evaluate a teacher with a rubric: satisfactory, distinguished, proficient. Yes, they can do that, things like that. And they go in and they meet with a teacher. If you're a new teacher, they come in and they do what's called formal evaluations, where it's like you turn in a lesson plan and then your administrator comes in and sits down and watches you teach. If you're a seasoned teacher, they come in with one formal evaluation and then they visit you throughout the year. Good administrators will be in your room 2-3 times, not every day of a school week, so that they can watch you, so that they know you. So that when little Timmy's mom calls and says, Mrs. Castillo never teaches reading, the administrator can say, wait a minute, she
I've been
teaches reading from 9 to 10:30 every day. That is untrue. So they can know what they're saying and what they're talking about. And then you meet and you talk and you set up goals. For example, my goal this year was to have use technology in my classroom more. I did that personally, and then I did it in my classroom as well. So when my administrator comes in, they look to see, am I using the technology? Are the kids growing by the use of technology? What's happening with this? So that's part of the evaluation system. And teachers who don't meet those goals or are struggling, they have a chance to learn. They can grow from it and educate themselves, take professional growth classes, go visit other classrooms. There's lots of mentors on campuses who can teach teachers how to teach. And then there's a separate plan where we get 301 money. So that's where teachers set up goals and you have to meet those goals to get that extra money. So that's another way of
increasing
your pay and helping kids grow with like a defined goal. And writing it down, stating it, making a plan for it, having people check in on it, making sure you're doing it. So the teachers grow, but it's separating good teachers from bad teachers is hard because it's not the same for everybody.
Right.
Now,
there are
clear
those
view. Yes,
right, there are those difficult teachers that
Yes.
that have lost their way when it comes down to
Yes.
teaching, and they honestly they shouldn't be involved in having contact with our kids, and they turn to be more damaging than educational.
Then that's where parents have to speak up.
Okay.
It's not my job to do that. That's where administrators and parents have to say.
Because you still have your kids, you know, and everything else, but
absolutely.
But so it's up to the parents, and it's up to parents to administrators to do that. What does that look like? What does that look like when you have, in your 17 years, I'm sure that you have dealt with somebody that should not have been involved in education anymore. What did the process look like to have that person removed? Was it?
Well, it does take a long time, and not even long, like eons, but you do have to prove that they can't perform in a classroom or they're not helping kids. And you really have to believe in your people, because people can be taught how to change or how to do things correctly.
Right.
And that's really important.
Sometimes they have to be inspired, and and
Yes.
just like with everything, sometimes it's crazy to sound, because being a teacher and being a law enforcement, being whatever it is, you answer the call, it's your calling, but you also have a personal life that might affect your performance, and you lose your way. That fire, it's
Absolutely.
not there. So a good administrator needs to recognize that and find a way to
Help them.
remotivate that person, remind them of why they're there.
Why they're
Does
there.
that make sense? And a lot of times, I'm a big fan of that comeback stories, you know, and I'm a firm believer in second chances. More than anything, I'm a firm believer, or I'm a fan, I should say, of that person that encounters difficulty, refines their way, and comes back stronger. And I think that's something that we need to allow our teachers to do, is just not
Absolutely.
walk into a classroom with the hatchet looking for heads to roll. You know,
And we also have to remember that teachers are people.
right,
I mean, I know we're damn good, but it's just, we're human.
right,
And we're going to have bad days, and we're going to say stupid shit, and it's just going to happen.
and it's just gonna happen.
And it's
right.
just going to happen. But you have to know your teacher, and you have to know who they are as a person. So what do parents do? You need to go into that room. You need to talk to your teacher. You need to email, find out information, be involved in your child's education.
How do parents increase that level of contact with the teacher? So
Well-
if I had a kid in your classroom, how do I get to know you as a teacher? How do I get to know the influence that you're having with my son?
So I'm going to contact you minimum once a week. The school is going to contact you twice a week. Now with all the social media, there's a Facebook page, there's pictures, there's news blasts, and they get them all through your phone, right?
Right.
So you are constantly connected to the school. What you have to do is that when that phone rings, oh, it's not the school. It has to be like, I wonder what the school has to tell me today. You actually have to be interested in what we're saying.
Right.
So that's a huge piece of education, is that, yes, I'm with your kid a lot, but you have to be interested in what your kid is doing. So when your phone rings and it's us again, you should care.
And I think that's a hypocrisy and I'll throw myself on the sword. I think that's a hypocrisy on the parent side, number one, because I want you to do an incredibly impossible job with my son.
Right.
I want to make sure that my son is the next Neil deGrasse Tyson. Also, I'm tired of all these emails that you're sending
Yeah.
me. And when you call, I'm going to be honest with you.
It's
I look at her
annoying,
and go,
right?
"Is
I
this
don't want to
school
talk to her
I
again.
don't want to talk to her again.
I know.
It's a school, is this, and it's that. And it's like, I answer because if my son did something wrong, I need to know what his consequences are. And when it's not that, and it's hey, we need to get to know each other, because one of the most important people in your life, spending half of the day with me, we need to get to know each other.
But you have to be willing to answer the call, right?
I never put a lot of honest effort behind that.
But I've had parents who completely ignore me, and then they come and they yell in my face. But I'm like, but I've tried to communicate with you, and
Right.
you don't like it.
Right.
And then I have other parents where we talk, and it might be a kid who's really struggling, and the parent might be frustrated, the kid might be frustrated, I might be frustrated, but there's so much hope because
There's good
everybody's
communication.
working together.
Yeah.
Whether we like what I'm saying or you don't like what I'm saying, we're still saying something that's important, and that's a huge piece. I didn't even remember what you asked me.
No, we were talking about the
Okay.
important. How do we get to build that communication between the parents and the teachers?
So you got to open it. So teachers send letters all the time.
Right.
And, and I send schoolwork home constantly. And you know that I have folders that come back, they're not even emptied. My kid is 6 years old. That's my clientele, 6-year-olds. And their folders are full of art projects and math problems and
Unchecked,
awesome,
undone.
yes, happy faces, stickers, smelly markers, and it is just still sitting in there for days.
Right.
What message does that send to your kid?
I'm gonna throw my parents under the bus in this one.
Oh
So
man,
I was the poster child for, in the 80s, ADHD, or not ADHD, but HD.
yeah,
So
hyperness.
yeah, awesomeness. And it was just like, I don't care what teacher's saying. So I wasn't disrupted, but I was like, what are humans doing? And the magical Eternia, Eternia. So and I had a big mouth on me. So when came down to grading stuff, the teacher would call the kid up and, oh, fucking Timmy, here's 3 stars. And then I would turn in my stuff and I was like, you don't get any stars. So my mom picked me up and I was like, I'm mad. And she was like, why? And I was like, I don't get any stars. My mom was like, you want stars? Let's go buy you some stars. So she went and bought me stars. She went and bought me stars. And that night I was like, man, fuck that teacher. So I put like 7 stars. I put like 7 stars on my thing. And she was like, what is this? And I was like, I don't need your fucking stars.
I got my own stars.
In Spanish, which led me to stand outside of the classroom. Yeah.
So here's my thing. Ready? Here's my story. So remember how I told you that my parents were like, education, that's it.
Right.
Okay. So when we moved from Nogales and I came
So
to
you were in
Tucson,
Nogales, Sonora.
I was in Arizona. I went to school in Nogales, Arizona. So when we moved from Nogales, Arizona to Tucson,
Right.
I was 10 years old in the 5th grade. And I went to a parochial school. And they were very much ahead of where I was in English, in our English class. So they were doing parts of speech and all of these awesome things that I couldn't do yet because I wasn't there. So the teachers kept me after school, and then I walked out to my mom and I said, I have to stay after school. Okay, stay after school. That's what you're going to do. You're going to learn? Yes. Stay after school.
Okay.
And then I have to keep going, right? And finally, one day I came out, and I'm crying, and I don't want to stay after school. This is hard. I don't want to do it. Get back in there. And she marched me right in there, and she told the teacher, are you teaching her something? Yes. Are you going to help her keep learning? Yes. Then she stays.
Boom.
Boom. And that was it. Right. Now, my mom was badass. That was what it was. Education was going to take me places, and it started at 10. Right. So if I wanted stars, I was going to freaking earn stars. She was not going to take me out to buy stars.
I am so glad we don't share the same mother. It would have been very, very difficult for her.
And for my brother, who was probably more like you, he hated school. Hated school. It didn't matter. He was going to school, and you were going to work really hard, and you were going to put your best effort.
Right.
Now, our expectations of what I brought home and my brother was different because we were different.
She's like,
human
you're
beings.
getting C's. That's cute.
That's cute.
Yeah,
good job. But for she knew that I could do more, and she pushed it. But she still expected us to learn. She still expected us to go to school. They still wanted us to do our best. Education was key.
And education is very important. I just feel like a lot of times the educational system is not really designed to teach every kid at the way that he or she is going to learn.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where technology and a teacher that is able to recognize it. However, you will not be able to recognize that if you have 40, 50 kids in the classroom.
There's no way.
So you need to, as a teacher, you need to be able to connect to how an individual kid is going to learn, what format. For me, oral presentation is probably the worst thing that you can do to me. Give me something that I can read later on, because the second you start talking, I'm tuning out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're
like, yeah. So, but I as I've grown, as an adult, I've learned to control that, and like I'm talking to myself, pay attention. But to this day, I learn far more if I obtain the material and I go back and I read it. But I think there's a lot of people that, and again, is a rolling snowball. It's a lot of people that are falling out of love with public education because the teachers are not doing a good job at educating my kid. So I'm going to just pull them out. They can obtain the education through some other ways. However, what we're failing to do is we're failing to recognize why our teachers are not capable of teaching our kids. And it goes back to that. It goes back to overwork, understaffed, underpaid, and the size of the classroom that these teachers have, the amount of time that they have to cover such large amount of material. But I also want to talk about, again, $31,000 a year.
Yep.
Right?
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot, but I also want to talk about what does a day look like for an average teacher.
Okay, I've been thinking about this a lot.
Right,
Are
because
you ready?
I have some first-hand contact of what that looks like.
Okay.
So the school hours are from...
Are you ready?
Yeah.
So I get paid 7.5 hours. That is what my salary is based on. Okay. 7.5 hours a day.
Right, which starts... What time does the day start?
So...
Let's just talk about what you do during the 7.5 hours.
Okay, sounds great. So I get to school about 7. My report time is 7:20. I have to be at school by 7:20.
Okay.
The bell rings at 7:45. Or 7:40, sorry. Then I teach my 7 hours, right?
Right. Kids leave.
Kids leave at 2. Then
So you get paid till what time?
I get paid till 2:50.
Till 2:50. So your
Yes.
kids leave at 2:50.
I get paid till 2:50.
So that leaves you with 50 minutes
Yes.
to do what? Grade?
Grade. So first grade might look very different than other high school, junior high, even 4th and 5th grade teachers. It looks
Right.
very different, right? So it gives me time to grade. It gives me time to email. It gives me time to make parent phone calls. It gives me time to prepare my room for the next day. And in first grade kindergarten, you're changing activities or lessons about every 30 minutes. So take your day and chunk it up into 30 minutes practically. Come up with projects, art projects, cutting, laminating, anything that's what I have is that 50 minutes. So 20 minutes before and 50 minutes after
And
school.
for the folks that were unable to follow all that does not happen.
Oh, no, it does not happen. No.
So, but then on top of that, so that's just when it comes down to the bare minimum of the school project,
Right.
which
Minimum.
a lot of the teachers, like I said, the true calling of wanting a kid to do better. A lot of the teachers ask a certain kid, "Bring me your backpack. Let's help you organize your folder."
Let's do it all.
So a lot of times, I know of a certain teacher that was with this particular kid for a lot of the school year till 4:30 in the afternoon. Till 4:30 in the afternoon, doing everything else that she had to be doing, plus dealing with this kid. And now I know this wasn't the only kid that she was dealing with. There were other kids that she was, for lack of a better word, volunteering her family time, her own time, to make sure that this kid didn't drown in the system, that classroom, that the school is.
But that's the calling part.
And that's the calling part.
That's the
but that
calling
is
part.
that's something that the public needs to understand. That is not the exception. It's almost the rule, where a lot of teachers are doing that.
Yes.
A lot of teachers are doing that.
Yes.
A lot of teachers did that for me when I was in high school. A lot of teachers did that for my kids as they were growing up through the school system. Not a penny more went to the pay of this teacher.
Not at all.
Not at all. And like I said, these teachers have their own kids to and their own family activities to do. So when you sit back and you think that $32,000 for a brand new teacher is enough, and they get paid for 7.5 hours per day, that is, number one, is an unrealistic amount of time. Number two, it's an unrealistic picture of what their day looks like when they're there till 4:30, 5 o'clock. A lot of times I was like, no, we're done. We got to go. Or this teacher would have stayed far more longer with this kid. But on top of that is one thing that where I think that law enforcement and teachers are very similar is that they are type A personalities. And it's great to have a type A personality in a system that works. The problem with that is when you're an administrator and you know that you have type A personalities, you can get away with having a poor planned system in place that you can put on the back of this type A personalities that will not allow this plan to fail.
Right, because you always make it work.
Because you always make it work.
Yes.
And while teachers are paying out of their own pocket for supplies, while teachers are staying 2 to 3 hours post their time that they got paid on their own to help kids.
Don't forget that then you take it home, because I do have to eventually get home.
You do have to eventually get home.
So don't forget the time that after my kids go to bed, I still work another 2 hours.
After your kids go to bed,
After
you
my
still work
kids go
another
to school.
2
And
hours.
don't forget what you take home for the weekend.
Right.
That's why the system doesn't fail.
And that's
because we continue to put in the work to keep it up, and it doesn't matter
right.
because of the calling
So
to make it work. Because I don't want to
250,
fail.
yeah. So 250, you're 250. You're supposed to send all these emails. Tell me how long you actually stay at school doing all this.
Well, because I love my marriage. I do try to leave by 4 o'clock.
Right.
But that's
We're not trying to
also-
end up divorced.
I don't
Yeah.
want to do that, but
Yeah.
Most days I do. My goal is 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock is my goal to
So at
leave.
4 o'clock, you report home.
I go home. I go home and I do my mom tasks.
Right.
My family tasks, my wife tasks, my me tasks. Just stuff that life.
Right.
And
then your kids go to bed.
my kids go to bed, so we're looking at 8 and 9 o'clock. And then I work to two hours probably. And then if my husband's at work, well, then I don't really have to go to sleep because I could get my job done and be awesome. It'd be great. So
Right.
I just keep going usually. But honestly, it is 2 hours. So I was adding all this up, right? So on a good week, I probably put in about 12 extra hours a week
12.
out of my classroom, out of my 7.5
That is
hours.
with how many kids?
In my classroom, 21
That's
kids.
with 21 kids at a entry grade, right?
Right, first grade, absolutely.
Now,
17 years, so I know how to do this already.
Right.
Yes.
So for a newer teacher, that is
way
looking at this
more.
way more.
Way more.
Now, do the math on your own. Fast forward to a teacher that is middle school, junior high,
Mm-hmm.
high school, with 40 kids.
Absolutely. Can you imagine? Like an English teacher. Can you imagine? I had a girlfriend who was an amazing, super smart woman. Awesome, awesome. I still have a girlfriend. She's still very nice. We're still friends. She started teaching. She was an English teacher. She loved teaching. She loved teaching high school kids English, reading Shakespeare, poetry. But she drowned her first year because she was constantly grading, constantly at school, constantly tutoring, constantly at meetings. She couldn't do it anymore. She lasted 2 years.
That's
done.
unfortunate. Then. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
What is she doing now?
She's a lawyer,
She's a lawyer.
but she doesn't love it.
She doesn't love it.
Doesn't
Would
love
she
it.
go back to education if it's
I don't.
the system
Not
changed?
like
No.
this.
Not like this.
Why-
Not with this system.
Why
This
with
is
this?
crazy.
There's no support. Or my brother-in-law. He taught in Sunnyside. He was an amazing PE teacher. Won Teacher of the Year. He is what every kid wants their child to have as a PE teacher. Like
Right.
inspirational. And not only at school and in your work and in your physical body being healthy, it was everything. He's an awesome guy.
Right.
He couldn't do it. He couldn't support his family on what he was getting paid. Done. Out. He can't. It's not possible.
Why has this broken system has been allowed to continue for so long, knowing that our teachers are drowning, knowing that we're losing good teachers because they can't keep up, they can't do it?
Because education isn't first in Arizona. It's not first. It's not our first priority. That's not what we're worried about.
Okay.
And-
Do you feel that it's starting to be also a nationwide trend? Because our grades as a nation, we're starting to, compared to other nations, we're starting to slip further and further back.
Yes. I think not education is not the priority of everybody. And the thing is that we could say that the teachers failed or all of these things, but teachers change with the times and we're constantly learning new things. Public school teachers, charter school teachers, parochial teachers, homeschool teachers, whatever it is we're constantly changing with what's going on around us. And yet the system hasn't changed. The funding hasn't changed. And that's important. We need to get what kids deserve, what they should have, so that kids who, like you said, who aren't textbook kids and they need to go to a school and work with things, there's money for them.
Right.
There's a place for them to go.
Right.
Kids who can't sit still in a classroom, or have trouble learning, or have special needs, your teacher should have an aide that can help them learn.
I also feel that there needs to be a revamping in education where we don't look down at manual labor as a failed student system, where we can look at somebody, a carpenter, a mechanics, as a trade, something
Absolutely.
like was their calling.
It's super important.
In that they were able to say, you know what? Because I think that one of the biggest answers that I pulled my kid, my oldest, from school early, and it was he has continued. Now, to this kid's credit, this kid is very involved in photography and is very involved in videos, and he's working for a very
prestigious academy?
No, but he's working for a very prestigious entertainment website. What's that? Promoter,
location.
right? But however, this kid, I'll say Joshua. However, Joshua, has because we have, I'll take credit as I have continued to challenge their mindset, like we talked about. I think that I've done a really good job. Number one, I won't take all the credit because they've had really good teachers such as you that challenge their mind, challenge their curiosity, and I'll continue to do that through their life. But this kid has that within him where he needed to learn Photoshop.
Yeah, and he sat and he learned Photoshop.
And he said, "Dad, drive me to Barnes and Noble." Drove him to Barnes and Noble. He has money because he gets a pay. He bought a Photoshop book and he sat there and read it. And then like 3-4 days later, he's messing around in the computer. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I learned Photoshop." And he reminded me of that scene in Matrix where he's like, "I know jiu-jitsu." That it was like that where he was like, "I know Photoshop.
I know how to do it.
I know how to do it." So I think that we need to revamp it of the school system where like Mike Rowe, who used to have a show on the Discovery Channel called Dirty Jobs. And he, I don't think he's doing the job anymore, but he has moved on to social media where that's one of his callings, and that's one of his missions, is to bring back labor jobs in America to where we recognize the value that they have and not look down as, well, he's a mechanic because he failed everything else. No, there are people that are driven to learn every inch of how a motor works. Absolutely. And that's their calling, and we need to respect those jobs.
Can you imagine if we funded education so that those kids who have callings like that can find it faster? But there's no money
without the struggle of like dropping out of school, and all that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And thank God that Yeshua had a first grade, second grade, third grade teacher that taught him how to read and comprehend what he was reading, so that he could teach himself. Right.
Right.
Because if
only she was here.
If those things hadn't happened, then what is it? Thank God that his parents say, "No, you will learn. No, you will succeed." Right. No, it is important for you to keep learning. And learning doesn't have to be in four walls. It's so many other places. But you do have to have the basics.
You do have to have the basics. But again, the learning doesn't have to be in four walls, but it could also be in a school setting that is properly funded.
Absolutely. Music. I mean, think about all the musicians out there. Or art. We don't have art in our schools. It doesn't exist.
That's so crazy.
And we're elementary school teachers and I'm teaching art. Okay, now come on now. I mean, I can do lots of things, but art, not so much. But if we had an art teacher, can you imagine what they would gain?
Right.
Or even in high school, if they had all the things that we, like shop or woodworking, all those other things that kids need.
Right.
We would find them faster.
Because I think that a lot of times, right now that education is caught up with like grades in the 4 major elements of school. Mm-hmm. And what's your graduation percentage, and what's your attendance percentage, and so on and so forth. But I think that a box that needs to be in there is, have you helped the kid find his calling? Mm-hmm. Whatever important. That is.
Can you move them? Right. Can they produce for you? In the end, what are they going to contribute to society? What are they going to give to the world?
Right. Which brings me to a friend of mine that's an educator, and this is the principal for Pueblo High School. Dr. Augie Romero, who is facing his own challenges with his contract not being renewed. But if you talk to the kids that have come in contact with them, every kid will tell you that Augie bumps into them when they're messing up, and one of his first questions is, "What will your legacy be?" And a lot of times it catches his kids by surprise. I don't know what legacy means. I don't know what you're talking about. When you're dead, what will people remember that you did? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, again, it's the first time that they've heard it, is the first time that their mind is challenged to that degree. But I don't know, education.
Kids are walking in for him.
Yeah, mm-hmm. They're doing. I think they did it today.
Yeah,
they did it today, and we're actually going to do a podcast talking about his situation. We're not going to ask him to be involved because obviously he can, but I think that people need to know the facts of his of the termination of his contract and this whole crisis that he's in. So we'll support Augie. All right, Michelle, we're going to finish this.
Awesome.
Tell us, how do we support this?
Red for Ed. Red all week long. Tell people to support education.
Okay. You brought this?
I brought this for you to put at the studio.
Absolutely.
Because I know you support education.
This will go.
And look at this.
It
Nosotros apoyamos Red for Ed.
Red for Ed.
Did you see that?
Okay, I like it.
I like it for everybody. Get on that AEU website, write an email to the governor, tell him that you want education supported because it's about everybody. It's not just
A
the
fundable,
kids. A
fundable,
fundable, sustainable
realistic
way.
And I think
to
that
pay everybody.
if you were gonna BS somebody with like, we'll give you 20%, teachers were like the wrong people to do that.
Probably.
Because they were like, let me read this. No, wrong.
I gotta say, that's
they
my
could have done it to cops because we would have been like, okay,
No,
we don't
that's
read
my
so
favorite
well.
part of the movement, honestly, is that we said no. That we said it's not just us. This is huge. This is education. This is everybody involved because your day is made up of more than just your kid and I. It's a lot more.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll support it. We'll. I can't wait for this
exciting.
for this to take root and to see something positive happen to education. And like you said, I think it's more than just pay. I think that maybe this will turn the eyes back into how underfunded education is, how many schools in Tucson and nationwide have closed down, how many arts and shop and woodwork and other very valuable classes have gone away. And we need to, if we're not investing in our kids, we're investing in our failure.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line. So
Absolutely. So
Thank
don't
you.
invest in failure.
Don't invest in failure.
Don't be mediocre. Be great. Every day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's do this.